everyone for joining us and to this opener discussion on finance today. Here at the ADFW auditorium stage. This is a very interesting discussion. We have a lot to cover, so I'll get right to it with our esteemed guests. And to really understand, as Khalil was saying around AI, what is it, and where we'll be discussing about the finance space. It can range from simple automation to generative AI. So, especially in an industry which security, along with healthcare, you're dealing with a lot of private information, sensitive information. This is something really interesting to explore. So, I'd like to put that question out there first. When we're speaking about AI in the finance space, what are we talking about? What are the benefits currently being used in this finance space? I'll put that out to Casey to begin.
Sure. As a ex-banker at Goldman Sachs, I have to say that my old days as a banker, my daily job has very little to do with technology and AI, to be honest. And I saw my team spend a lot of times processing manual work mechanically most of the time. And I think the world of finance has really changed a lot over the past year. I think the generative AI brought a lot of open mindset to the people on the ground in terms of applications. But if we're talking about the general applications of AI, I think it's quite broad. So it can be value added to each aspect of the operations of the institution. So starting from lead generation, very importantly, in this terminal time, everyone wants to get the top line revenue, right? So AI leveraging deep learning, the knowledge graph technology can help, for example, FAs to identify high quality companies, fast growing companies before they become unicorn and be surrounded by various FAs. And there are also the technology that can help corporate bankers to identify the high quality SME companies for lending. And these are the applications that are very powerful, not just getting you the name, but telling you the shortest path to reach these people. So that's very important. And also, I think the other way AI that can add value is customer engagement. From simple applications like using robots to provide customer service Q&A to some more advanced applications that we provide to, for example, wealth advisors, that they use the technology solution to serve their end users, doing automatic portfolio assessment health checks, as well as the rebalancing of the portfolio recommendations based on the market movements, based on their goals, risk tolerance, etc. So, and I think the most critical part is when it comes to productivity enhancement. And that's where I feel most passionate about. In particular, if the solution is curated and embedded into the workflow of different roles where you play in the financial ecosystem. So we have solutions for research analysts. So there's technology that can help you to pull out the latest quarterly earning results in a single clicks, and also help you to update your valuation model based on the latest macroeconomic industry, other company level assumptions and inputs. And also the sell side solution for investment bankers allows you to pull out the pitch book as well as company profiles in a simple clicks rather than having analysts to working on it the day and night. As well as if you're a trader, for example, you might need to report to your boss about why did you lose this money on this trade and what happened in the day. So AI can really help you to pull all these stories together. This is the trade, the performance over the day. This is the benchmark, and then what happened in the day throughout the course, positively, negatively, that drove those movements. And last but least, I think compliance, operation management is at the core of financial institutions these days. And then I think it's in the past as well. So a lot of value AI can help to for example, help with automatic due diligence, EKYC, identify fraudulent transactions and related party transactions use this knowledge graph. If we have this information of penetrating the macroeconomic, the industry value chain, the company level information, intervene everything together, this knowledge graph is really powerful when it comes to these operational and risk management.
That's a great answer, and I think that was very comprehensive in identifying that it's very integrated on all facets, from the customer side, to the behind the scenes. It's some AI isn't something you can say this is AI. It's across the board. And Rona, I'd like to extend this to you in terms of how is traditional finance space receptive to this? This is always something where the finance spaces, and along with healthcare and others and security, are maybe slower to adopt these types of things because the risk might be higher. There are a lot of unknowns. Can you talk a bit about that at the current stage? Maybe to what extent is AI being used? Because Casey had mentioned a broad spectrum of things. To what extent are we actually using, and how receptive is the traditional finance space to it?
Sure, Salim. I think Casey's already given a great overview of all the different use cases, so I won't go through those again. Maybe I'll zoom out and say, without being boring, we need to define our terms. I used to be an analyst for many years, so what do we mean by AI? Because a lot of what banks, enterprise, government does is machine learning, regression analysis, sometimes very high level data analysis, but it isn't generative AI. Now, there's a lot of projects, pilots, work streams underway on Gen AI, and over the next year, 2 years, there will be a lot of Gen AI used inside financial services. Why? Information. What's the raw material of our industry in finance? It's data, it's numbers, it's words. And what's our output? Yes, we provide, as an intermediary, financial services. But again, the output tends to be words and numbers. We don't make, objects. We help these objects get made. So in a way, our industry is ideal for both discriminative AI and Gen AI and any sort of variation of that. But if you zoom in and ask any major financial institution, not how many AI projects do you have, but how many Gen AI projects are in production across the firm, the numbers are very small. If you said how many AI/ML projects do you have, typically in a large organization, you're looking at several hundred, depending on how you define a model or a project. You're typically looking at hundreds. Again, these numbers can be put into thousands, but again, it depends on definition. Um, where we see going forward the biggest and best use case in the next 1 to 2 years, I think Casey used the word productivity. We see significant benefit in productivity, both for our technology staff, our developer staff, and for the non technology staff. And maybe just two examples. There's about, in major global banks, there'll be anywhere between 30 and 50,000 developers or technology staff, depending on how you define it. Obviously, for PR purposes, we use bigger numbers. So we put all our tech stuff into developer. So public number is about 40,000. Now, those 40,000 developers are going to be do a lot more in terms of basic coding, code generation, code checking, code opt. This is going to lead to significant boost in productivity, anywhere between 30 to 50% on basic tasks in coding, 10 to 20% in more advanced tasks. So you're going to see significant benefits in that space. In terms of non-technology staff, it'll be initially internal because none of these models are 100% foolproof. So we're not going to be using it that much for external high value contact, but internal analysis, internal, just kind of going through your existing content. Whether you're a bank or a consulting firm or any large organization, there's a huge amount of content, usually outside the reach of most employees. So information retrieval, analysis, and management is going to be the major other use case for non-technology stuff.
Wonderful. And I think that speaks to some data that I'd seen online that around 70% of companies are aware that AI is playing going to play a major role in finance. 80% said it was the future. Again, this was from various studies, so I'm just giving very general numbers. But then also the R&D phase is where a lot of attention with AI to find those use cases. And as you said, internally more than externally, dealing directly with customers or with clients. So I think that's really interesting to identify the stage where it reminds me of the crypto approach, where it's a bit more cautious approach, but using it internally to understand it first, before using it publicly or with clients directly. And Professor Marwan, can you give an example of what that looks like in terms of do you have like a from your research, like have you seen like case studies where to understand what problem AI is solving in the finance space?
Okay, so I'm less in the finance sector than in the generative AI space. And basically, of course, I mean, I can give you my experience where in the UAE, we built, when I was chief researcher at the Technology Innovation Institute, a big large language model called Falcon LLM, which is now basically one of the biggest open source foundational model. These foundational models are quite general, and in general, what you need to do, and what we're seeing with the various, I would say, verticals, is the need, of course, to build what we call on-premise type of generative AI, meaning bringing basically the model within the company and then try basically to fine tune it for specific use cases related to that. On those cases, of course, what we're seeing is, of course, the difficulty in getting basically reliable, good answers. So I can give you, for example, in the finance sector, the examples which are given, I think, are very illustrative of things that you can do. But a lot of these things also could be done related to machine learning and techniques, and they're being used already in the industry. But when you start looking at what generative AI is doing, is mixing numbers, being able to calculate, make some calculus. At that stage, we're still at that level. So having basically generative AI that can beat mathematicians, be able to do very good calculus is a bit complicated. So what we're seeing is people wanting to use the result and then checking it and then adjusting the results, because you still need, whenever there's numbers going on, these things are still not very well in terms of behavior, giving the results that you need. The second thing also, of course, is everything about the memory of the company, and I think this is very important. One thing which is very important about generative AI is that, of course, it gathers all the know-how of the company, because there's a turnover in these companies. Finance is one where people leave and come, and you'd like to have some information about what happened in the last 3 years related to that and who was dealing with that. All that information can be gathered in that model. So even if there's a turnover of employees, all the know-how, and you can get information about what happened in the last 10 years on the financial status within the documents, but also in terms of all the exchanges of information which
How
are done.
current is it? Is it only like, for example, I think with ChatGPT, it's up until 2021. I forget the exact year, but how current can you?
Yeah, you can go
data from?
further, because what you do is that you take these models. For example, if you take Falcon, then you bring in your own company, and then you will be starting to what we call fine tune it based on the knowledge. So you'll increase basically the kind of knowledge and up to date. So this is something that can be continuously trained within the company. So there's no like question of saying you're going to stop at a certain moment, because once you start giving it the data within your company, you can train it up to the last things, and you can continuously train in this thing. So that's fine.
And what's the adoption rate at the moment of such technology?
So it's just the start. I have to admit, it's just the start. I think, like what my colleague was saying, I think in the next 2 years, you'll see a lot of big things. Of course, a lot of people come to us and saying, okay, I want to predict the market. This is not the generative AI will not be able to predict the market. So we're not going to tell you, because things like the war in Ukraine is something that never happened, and it's unexpected. So if you're trying to use it for investments, this is not typically the thing. However, all the documents, all these cases are the trend that we're seeing, but it's just starting at the moment. Yeah.
Exactly, and this is the time like where you have to get the accuracy higher to be used. And again, I keep repeating, it's such a sensitive space. I think, Casey, you have at Windfall an example of using generative AI, like being able to ask questions, especially with financial language, which is much more specific, than using ChatGPT. Can you talk a bit about how this has actually benefited you in your type of work?
Yeah, sure. I think I really echo what Ronnie just said. So there's two big issues for general AI to be applied in financial sector. Number one is hallucination. You really need to address those hallucination issues in order for get to external usage, right? Accurate information, real-time updated information that you cannot continue to train the model every week. The cost doesn't allow that. So we have been spending many times in this area, and we think the only way to address this is to combine a financial large language model as a base with a huge database, a information database, like for example, Wind and other information database. It can be your internal database as well. But there is also complications with that. You may have experience of chatting with GPT and asking a question, it gives you the number immediately. But that is only a fraction of numbers and APIs that we as financial professionals dealing with every day. The more powerful the information database is, the more complicated it is to draw the right APIs and functionalities. For example, Wing process PB level information, global financial information, global macro, industry, company level information, and the ability to allow the model to interact with informations to find the right thing is very critical. The second challenge is to deal with numerical tasks, right? Unless the model can do the numerical tasks precisely, there is no way that the financial professionals will use it for these critical transactional kind of activities. And the way that we solve that is not just through the master model. We believe there needs to be some expert model that working conjunctively with the master model. So we leverage our past 3 decades of experience of dealing with data analytics to train a specialized model. This model has the capability of processing thousands of lines of Excel functions and Excel informations with many different indicators. Pick the right needle for you from the oceans. And the accuracy rate, as well as the ability to trace the information, is very important, because if you look at the global leading general applications of that, they may only get you 70% accuracy rate, but that is far from enough for financial usage, because financial people has literally zero margin of error, right? So
And
through
sorry to
that
cut you off. I just want to.
application.
I mean, I think you covered it well, and especially that it's at the stage it still needs human oversight to especially incorporate the context, nuance, things like that, confirm numerical calculations. And we have 2 minutes left. I just wanted to put to the audience, if you have any questions. This is a very vast topic, and it's starting off the day. But if you have any questions from what we've heard at the moment, please raise your hand, and we'll bring the mic to you. Okay, great. More, I don't. Do I see any hands up? No. Great. Please continue then. And I wanted to ask you, like, say, in the next, I'll put this out, to everyone. In the next, like, 5 years, how do you see AI? Particularly, I mean, because it seems like it's a peak discussion around generative AI. How do you see this evolving in the next 5 years? Do you see adoption? Do you see that this is something that's still ongoing, the same way that crypto and regulation stuff like that is? Where do you see this, moving 5 years forward?
I think it's a race between good use cases and bad use cases, and also the other side of the triangle is probably the regulator or what's permitted, because financial services in most economies, if not all economies, are a highly regulated industry. Good use cases we've talked about, mainly productivity, information management, retrieval analysis. Bad use cases is we can just create loads of more content. I mean, and think about our lives 30, 40 years ago. I mean, the amount of content we would consume. We'd read a newspaper in the morning or turn on a TV and get a couple of channels. Now we're getting constantly spammed 24/7. If I can create content like this, is that a good thing or a bad thing? And am I creating quality content? Casey talked about the analysis of an earnings report. I think many of us have seen Microsoft Copilot in action. You drop in the NVIDIA earnings release that just came out. That would take me, as a young analyst, half a day to read, probably, if not longer. It can do it in a minute or two. And they can create a PowerPoint presentation. That would have taken me a whole day's work 25 years ago. That can be done in a couple of minutes. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Seems like a good thing, right? But the bad thing is I can just spam all of you with loads more content. And so will we actually get a productivity boost? Second thing is deepfakes and frauds, and the question of trust. I could have, if I'm on the trading floor, or if I'm a CFO, I could have my CEO call me, video call me and say, send the money now. It's urgent. I'm getting on my plane. Do it now. When I land, I want the money. Or, you're a parent and you get called by your kid at school saying, this is a very safe country. I live in this country, but many other parts of the world, it's not so safe. You get a call from your kid saying, Mom, Dad, send the money now. I've been kidnapped. I mean, you panic at that point, right? There's so many bad use cases. So I know I shouldn't be saying this early in the morning, but there are good things we can do and bad things. And it's still to be seen how much of this productivity boost will actually play out.
No, definitely, and I think this is what's expected. It's always a double-edged sword with technology, right? Like you have new solutions, but at the same time you have new problems. It reminds me of social media, in terms of like mental health, things like that. We don't even know how to identify these things yet, and that's what makes the job of regulators, a bit more difficult, and even central banks, to be able to monitor the finance space. So, yeah, I'll leave the final thoughts to you, Professor Marwan, and especially when speaking about advanced AI. And as Ron was talking about, it's going to change the way that we operate in our day to day. What are some things that you see as possible, the good and the bad, in terms of things that we can't even fathom just yet, but that we're going to see in our lives, again, good or bad?
Yeah. So around the good things, of course, the first one is what everybody's working on, which is the capability of the generative AI of having what we call reasoning and planning capabilities.
Mm.
Today, we're not still there, but everybody's working on that. And I think in the next 5 years, we'll see some kind of emergence of capability of reasoning of these models.
Can you give an example of like what it would
Yeah,
solve?
so basically you give them a task with a very like task which is at a high level description, and it's able basically to give you that information and solve the problem.
like decision making.
Decision making, exactly. So
Wow.
you're not just behind. And I think this is one thing. And of course, we're already seeing at the moment some of these models with additions of reinforcement learning techniques are trying already to achieve some result that we're seeing in the case of reasoning and planning. So it plans things. The second thing also, which is important in finance, is the speed at which these systems are working. So whenever you're so there's two part, which is like the training, and I think once it's trained, it's okay for you. But then it's the inference part, getting the result quite fast. And getting the results quite fast is very important because at the moment it's a human which is behind a machine, but after it's a machine trying to get the inference from that machine quite fast to do these transactions that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And the third thing that we're seeing, which is very important, which is going to come next year, is what we call multi-agents, meaning basically that, well, you'll specify to an agent what needs to be done, and the agent is going to discuss with another agent, which has it's a multi-generative AI agent, and they will do the transactions, start talking, and start. So it's like a chat GPT talking to another chat GPT.
Yeah. Wow.
Today you're talking to the chat GPT, but the future is about intelligence being connected together, and they're talking. And if you have so many, they can of course collectively do some things. And this is the next big thing next year. A lot of people are going to be bringing more and more what we call AI agents, which are generative AI based, and I think this is going to be a big hit.
Yeah, it begs the question as well. I mean, where do humans fit into that if they can have discussions by themselves and make decisions and manage? So yeah, but I mean, I kind of know the answer to that. I think we've all read about AI in terms of it's not going to replace humans. If anything, it's going to need humans to adopt different roles, have different bodies, in companies that are, providing even the human aspect, to technology. So again, there's so much more that we can talk about with this, but we are out of time. And I just want to thank our guests for this insightful conversation. And please enjoy the rest of your day.